Hi, I'm Flor D'Amelia, and welcome to Starting with IEP, episode number 3. This week, we're going to be talking to Heather Knickerbocker, who has over 20 years of experience. Now, last week, we spoke to Missy Purcell, where we reviewed about the emotional toll of a parent, right, and going through advocacy. Now, we know the role of a parent, we understand, and please listen to that episode so you know that you're not alone. But once you are grounded and you understand that this is your role as a parent, which I'm sure you guys know, but sometimes you feel bad that you can be seen as that parent. But once you feel comfortable in that, now you can push forward. And this week's episode, you're going to learn how to push forward and get your child's IEP goals. So I suggest you, if you guys can print it out or look through it as you're listening to this episode. Heather Knickerbocker, who resides in Florida, actually Missy's neighbor who is in Georgia. And also what I'm trying to get you guys is different resources throughout the state, because in every state, people do things differently. And sometimes we want to get things that we like from that state. We want to bring them to our own state. So if I'm telling you different states, because that way maybe you can reach out to Missy Purcell and be like, hey, I like your program on dyslexia. Can you please help me kind of get this along in my own state? And then maybe someone from, a different state, like, I don't know, Connecticut, wants to reach out to Heather. Hey, Heather, I need your help in. Would you like to collaborate? Find that so much beauty in collaboration and working together just to make our system better. So, as I was mentioning, please grab your child's IEP to jot down notes, as Heather is going to be explaining more and more about the IEP. Also, grab a pen and paper to jot down notes. You can pause. There might be times where you might feel a little bit overwhelmed. You can definitely slow down the track. Or you can kind of speed up the track too, in case you're like, oh, I kind of understand this part. And then once we get more into detailed. You're also going to definitely appreciate, I know I appreciated her so much more when she talked about it being data-driven. Ooh, sorry, because not a lot of people understand the importance of data. Now, if you want another episode where we can really dive into more data, please let me know. If you have any questions about this episode, you want to know more about certain things that was mentioned, please put it in the comments. Please don't forget to follow, subscribe. Please share with another family so that way they can also learn and get the resources that we're giving out. Okay, well, let's listen to the episode. See you soon. Hi everyone, this is Flor D'Amelia with Starting with IEP, and today who we have is Heather Knickerbocker. Hi.
Hi.
Hey. I was wondering if you can please start off by just sharing more about yourself.
Of course. So my name is Heather Knickerbocker, and I have employed with the school system for over 20 years for working in education. That's where I had my passion for becoming an advocate, and started out as a teacher in a self-contained classroom working with students with emotional and behavioral disorders. I became later in my career a behavior management teacher, 6 years of my career, on myself, oftentimes advocating for my students from within the system. And that can become a challenge because you're working for a system and trying to advocate for the students. I became a little bit of a troublemaker as far as into both ends, but I really wanted to fight hard for my students. So I always felt like when I retire, I'm going to become an advocate. It continued through my career, and I have 3 boys. My middle son started high school, and he has a 504 plan, and he has G. He had some difficulty as far as his school in the services that they needed to provide in the 504 plan accommodations. And when I sent them a courteous, casual email, thinking that they would say, okay, this person also works for the same system that we are in, and a lot of pushback. And I said to myself, if I, who work in the system and has so much experience, can't even receive the professional courtesy that most professions give other, there's no way that parents that are inexperienced about education or don't know or don't have the knowledge or experience that I have are getting any kind of courtesy. If they're looking at my name and saying, okay, we need to give his accommodations, his knows what she's talking about, then there's no way anyone is, respect, courtesy. And it really kind of fire underneath me. So
Are you able to share what they said in that email?
the original disagreement was about what extended time is. And so, well, that he attends is a magnet school and very high achieving. And feel like if you don't fit in the box, they kind of don't you there. Like, this is the box that our students are expected to fit in. And he is very bright. On one end, he's gifted, but on the other end, he has ADHD and attentive. So it's very hard for him to stay on track and organize and kind of fool himself on what's most important. And he is extended time. So a lot of those teachers were saying time is time and a half only because that's what we allow for AP testing. And I said, okay, that's great for AP tests, but this is not an AP test. In your classroom, this is a quiz, and he needs the extended time. And if he's working diligently, then the extended time is whatever he needs to the end of the period. If he needs to come back during lunch, it depends on what the student needs. So asking sleeping and not using the extended time to his benefit. But if he's sitting there diligently working, then he should get what he needs. And so push back as far as no, it was time and a half and that's it. And I said, so you're telling me every student in your school that has extended time gets time and a half? So it's not individualized? They were like, oh, wait a second. Oh, we can't say that. It has to be individualized. It's what the student needs. It's not what you decide is fitting into your box. So that was the original issue I had with the school. And when I realized that they wouldn't listen to someone who was, a behavioral expert in the field, it lit a fire underneath me and sped up my plan to go to law school. Instead of waiting till I was on the way out to retire, I'm going to go to law school right now so that I can make sure to advocate not only for my children, but for anyone I need to. Right.
Please take us in your journey for your education. You're going on your 5th degree.
I'm doing my PhD now, and that's my 5th degree. So, bachelor's and undergrad in special education, and immediately went into my master's in special education with a focus in science. I went into my specialist degree, which was in administration and curriculum.
Thinking about being a principal?
Considering it, just because that was kind of like natural pathway that a lot of people take. The administration end is a little too political for me and isn't enough about the kids. It's more about the system. And immediately although I'm grateful for the knowledge of knowing what goes on with administration, important, and knowing, and focus in curriculum as well. So that was helpful. I took the leadership test, passed, and then decided not to add it to my certificate. I was like, for me, I don't think I want to be and so then those degrees, and then focus in advocacy. So that was last degree.
Like for me as a parent, I just see you as, oh my goodness, like a library full of resource, a place where you get all your resources. Instead of hiring different people, I feel like people can hire you and just be like, bam, she has all the answers, like an encyclopedia.
I find that like unique position that I'm in because I've had so much experience in the classroom, so much experience behaviorally. And then I've been on the other side of the table as a parent as well. And then now that I went to law school, I have that additional knowledge that I felt I needed. I felt I needed those little spots that I was missing because although I've been in a million IEP meetings, a million 504 meetings, a million behavior plans, you make sure you have the case law behind you. When there's an issue, you can go and pull that from library, Fuels me is, I want to say, my love for not only my kids, but for the kids that I've worked with over the years. A lot of misconceptions about education out there and what the kids are capable of when they grow up. People say, okay, like they have the view of like that old school mentality of like maybe it should be in portables and we kind of don't even about them and what are they going to contribute to society. And that infuriates me because we have geniuses in special education that do math problems running around me in circles and that are going to grow up to be engineers and design bridges that, we over. So it says like, oh, why we need to give all these services to these kids, it's because these kids are fabulous and we never know what they're going to grow up to be. They contribute all sorts of things to society and they are all important in a way.
Yes, and I love how you mentioned that you have these really close relationships with your students. I think one of them you've been with middle school and high school,
I
right?
was with students their entire middle school career as their behavior management teacher. And then I went to their high school with them and was with them their entire high school career until they graduated. And it was just amazing to see the growth and things that, working on in middle school that were just completely disappeared in high school. And then things that they started on in ninth grade in high school that just were not even existing anymore when they graduated. And you're like, see those amount of growth, usually the parents get to see because years or you're with them at one school and you're not with them at the other school. So when I would be in a meeting with a parent who felt like maybe upset about something that happened at school, a little in the road, I would remind them like, this is a bump in the road, like back at where we came from. Like we came from maybe a child who didn't want to be in school, had school phobia, would try to escape class, to a kid who's here every day and never leaves, is getting all A's, maybe like one B, is super motivated, successful. Like the growth is amazing. So if there's a little bump in the road, that's to be expected. And that's a kid with any teenager. They're trying to, they have to remember this is a normal part of growing up is testing our limits and seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have so many questions for you, and I hope that's
Yes,
okay.
of course.
I often see IEPs as a blueprint for our children's life. Like I remember when I was a parent that it was like kindergarten and I'm already talking about college. And a lot of the teachers were like, oh, they don't see what I saw. But can you please tell us how these IEP goals, how they can help our children achieve what we as parents have a vision for our kids, but as our kids grow up, then our children will speak up and what they want. Please help us, the parents, understand like why are IEPs so important?
So one of the reasons
Oh, you're also a parent
Yes.
yourself.
So one
Sorry.
of these reasons IEPs are so important is because the goals guide the services and instruction, and they give us a way to measure whether your child is growing and being successful along the way. Although in kindergarten, we start out with this vision for our children, as they grow along the way, the vision changes, and that's with any child. They decide they want to do in high school is not necessarily what they're going to want to do in, middle. And also we want to see what are their strengths, what are their abilities. We want to hone in on those things so that they can feel that success. We want to work on their weaknesses because everybody needs to work on their weaknesses. So especially with our children with an IEP, we need to know exactly what those are and what way they learn, what the best way they learn. Are they a visual learner? Are they hands-on? Because that means that instruction needs to be geared towards that when we're working on their goals. So goals are very important, but it's so important that you're working with, that they're not these cookie cutter goals that we're kind of pasting. The IEPs are not stale goals that stay there every year and get passed along. Because although it's 100% okay to be working on coping skills this year and be working on coping skills next year as a social goal, it is not okay for them to be the same exact goal because we should have progressed in that goal. We should be working on something different, see some data. I ask for raw data in particular, and I think that's something very important that parents need to know that they can ask for. Let me see the raw data. Let me see the graph with the trends, stories. If you need the data from any goal, on this week, what was going on that the data was so different from this week, and see things getting better, let's work on a different part of that goal. If things are not getting better, we need to adjust the goal because something's not working. So that tells us what we need to do. It guides us. We're looking at these things all the time. Parents need to be updated on to see if progress is being made. If it's not, let's have a meeting because a lot of times everyone thinks, oh, an IEP meeting is once a year. An IEP and a 504, these are working documents. You can have a meeting whenever you need to. And if things not working, let's call a meeting and address it before it becomes a problem.
What would you say for the parents that, because I feel the parents, I know that the parents, how when they are going to an IEP meeting, they might, what it was like PS, post traumatic
Post-traumatic stress. They have, yeah, it's very stressful and intimidating to be in a meeting as a parent with professionals at a school who, they're you how things should be and what it would look like. And you don't really want to make waves for your child and you're worried, oh, is this going to affect my child if I, speak up? But important to know what is going on in the meeting and what your rights are as a parent and what your child's rights are so that you can make sure that your child's getting what they need. When a parent goes into that meeting and feels they completely get it's hard to go into a room full of professionals and, knowing exactly how things are supposed to work. Where people like us come in and I'm an advocate and I can attend that meeting with the parent. I can give them guidance as to, looking over the documents before the meeting and letting them know what to do, what to ask for, as far as like parents don't necessarily want to bring an advocate on board as far as attending meetings with them because they feel like they hire me to just look over the documents and give them guidance. But a lot of times the parents don't know that they have a right to ask for drafts before the meeting. So these parents sometimes are walking in being handed a document, which how can you really read and go through that document during that meeting while all these people are speaking to you? You can't read that document critically and listen to all the professionals. And so they end up kind of just being and signing and moving along. No, you have a right to see a draft of whatever documents are going to be done, whatever data they have on your child.
Mm-hmm.
Look over it. And that's where I come in and help them look over it and them some guidance. I'm right away feel more comfortable having me there to speak on their behalf.
I remember those years in the much earlier years. I remember just being scared. And I feel like if they do have someone that, because I'm not saying things just to say things, like I know I'm in the right and I'm advocating for my child.
Most professionals are trying to help the child. Most people, their heart is in the right place. They're trying to do right by the child. But there are those experiences, like in every profession, where corners are being cut, things are not being done the correct way. And in those experiences, yes, the parent already has had that traumatic experience and has to fight for their child. They're in that fight or flight mode when they enter the meeting, which is terrible to feel. And that's where they really do need someone to help step in and help them.
I really loved your advice about making sure that the goals, they don't repeat themselves. Can you give us more specific examples about the one that you were talking about, something how it can look different?
There is a coping skill goal for a student to work on staying in the classroom because their usual coping skills is to try to escape the classroom. So the coping skill goal is going to start out at their level. It needs to be something that's achievable. That we can't say that if this student has been leaving the classroom every day for the entire year and trying to leave as their escape method, as their way of coping is to leave the classroom, then we can't say that the goal is going to be that they will never do this again. That's not practical. So then the goals have to be on their level. So we can say they will take a walk with an adult because that's still leaving the classroom, but they will have to learn how to ask first. They can walk over to an area in the classroom that may feel like they can get away from the stressor, like a calming area. I really love schools that set those up, calming areas, calming rooms in the school with a lot of sensory relief for the students. So there's all sorts of different things that they can do, but you have to know the child. You have to really do a deep dive of functional behavioral assessment and see why that behavior is occurring. Because if you don't know why the behavior is occurring, you can't successfully replace the behavior. You never get rid of a behavior. If the child feels like they need to escape that stressor, they're still going to feel like they need to escape that stressor, but you're replacing the negative behavior, which is running out of the classroom, with a positive replacement behavior, which may be to ask for what they need or to go to the sensory area, or you're giving them an acceptable behavior that they will be able to use lifelong. Because one day this child's going to be in the workplace and they're going to be an adult. This is what I tell people all the time when they're like, oh, we can't give breaks in the classroom because that's not going to be, acceptable in the workplace. And I said, oh, are you allowed to go get water and coffee or go to the room when you're at work? You are. That's a break. If you're really stressed out at work, take a restroom break and go gather yourself, That's exactly what we're teaching our children to do. We actually get a lot more accommodations as adults than we realize. So you're just teaching them to use those accommodations. It would not be acceptable for me to run out of my office building. However, it would be totally acceptable for me to get a restroom break.
I loved how you said it achievable, the same level. Do you want to talk more about this, the essential ingredients for the IEPs?
The gap between where the student is and where they should be academically, behaviorally, socially. So we want to make sure that you use that SMART to kind of like remind yourself of what the goals should be. So we want to be very specific. We want to clearly define the behavior or the skill that we're looking for. We can't just say we want them to read better. No, that's not specific. We need a specific thing that we're working on. It needs to be measurable. We have to know what way we're going to track the data. I want to know what data I should be looking for to see if there's progress. It has to be achievable. Okay, so if I'm working on adding and subtracting with this student, I can't say that they're going to be doing algebra, right? That's not achievable. Algebra may be what the grade level expectation that is what we're working on. Remember, this is to close the gap. Correct. You need to
Yeah,
find
they need to
this is
collect
the
their
map to get
baselines.
there, and it's not going to tomorrow. But we need to also make sure it's time bound. So this goal usually is how long an IEP lasts. However, like I said, we can always meet. You can meet 5 times a year if you, right? It's a working document
That's
to be met in a year. So it should be to get closer to where you're supposed to be, right? We're trying to close the gap, and it should be relevant. It should be relevant to the child's needs, and it should be relevant to the curriculum. So it should be relevant to what classroom and getting there and reaching that.
the parent says, hey, I want you guys to make sure that you guys deliver a SMART goal. What would you advise the parents to look for, like the red flags for the goals being?
Are we talking about comprehension? Are we talking about fluency? You need some criteria for success. So how are we going to meet that goal? How are we going to measure it? We need to know what supports or conditions are going to be in place. Who is helping them achieve this goal? What teacher is going to be responsible for monitoring it? Are they going to be taught using a specific instruction? Is there some kind of specific computer program? A lot of times reading programs, certain fluency programs are in place. Is that what we're going to be using? Is it a specific instruction? Are they expected to do this independently or with support? Is a teacher going to be giving them instruction, or are they going to be practicing this on their own? Those all need to be included and watched out for in the goals. We need to make sure, again, that it's not a copy and pasted goal. I've seen a lot of copy and pasted goals and reports from different professionals. You'll see a he, she slipped in for the wrong gender, the wrong name, the wrong grade level, that this is only information related to our case, and review it. If you know what's going on with your
Yeah,
child, you know what the strengths and weaknesses are, you can look at that document and figure out what is accurate and what is not. Does this really pertain to my child? For those parents who may be a little confused about that, sometimes they need help interpreting test scores to see if that's true. That's where I come in a lot of times with the data, looking at the data and then looking at the goals. Because if you're not in education, sometimes it's confusing to interpret. And that's where my years of being in education come in handy for me. I can look at the data and say, okay, the fluency is on grade level 3 and the students in 6th grade. So why isn't there a fluency goal?
yes, no, I'm glad. I'm so happy that you actually touched on data, because a lot of the concerns that I'm hearing from families is the whole 80% accuracy for across 4 to 5 sessions or days. Can you please explain that to parents on what that really means and how that?
So say if it's a math goal and the math goal says that they will perform at 80% accuracy for word problems, they will solve two-step addition and subtraction problems with money with 80% accuracy. That means when I go to that meeting, I can ask for work samples that show they received 80% accuracy, which would be test samples. Anything they do as far as work on the computer programs that would work on that specific goal. And if they're saying 4 out of 5 times will be 80% accuracy, then that means 4 out of 5 of those scores will be 80 or above. And if that isn't true, then that child isn't meeting that goal. Now, that looks different depending on what the goal is, right? So if it's a writing goal, then you would have to look for the specifics that are in that writing goal that many times. If it's a behavioral goal, they should be giving you some kind of and some kind of data collection as to that goal. A lot of times the behavioral goals are tracked on frequency. If it's speaking out, getting out of your seat. If it's like a tantrum, it may be intervals, like how long the tantrum lasts. If the goal is to get the tantrum to last under 5 minutes or things like that. But you should be able to look at the raw data that the teachers are providing and then look at the graph that matches it to see if that goal is being met. And that's very important to be able to see the data, because when it comes to those forms coming home asking every 9 weeks if your child is meeting their goals and they say they're progressing.
Can you tell us about how do they collect? I guess it would be like in their progress. A lot of the times, like, how did you get this 80%? Or how did you get this 70%? And then a lot of the times they're like, this is the last 3 times that we've collected. Are they like hand picking it, or just depends on the district, or what have you seen, or like the cases that you have been working on?
And what we're defining, which is why it's very important that you define what data is going to be reported for this goal, right? So if it's an academic goal and you're saying it's for the specific skill, in reality, all the data on that skill should be collected, right? It shouldn't be just the last time we did it in class, because that's not accurate. That last time they could have been getting a lot of one-on-one assistance from the teacher. It could have been that the teacher did a direct lesson right before it and the student just regurgitated what they saw. There's a lot of different things that come into play. So if it is a writing skill goal and you've worked on writing 10 times this 9 weeks, then all 10 times should be part of that data collection. If it is a behavioral goal and the behavioral goal is to stay in your seat unless you raise your hand, then that means every day that you've gotten out of your seat without raising your hand, there should be data collected. There should be a frequency, a little line drawn. And I hear a lot of times from schools and teachers, hard to collect
Yes, that right
data
there.
when I have a classroom full of kids. I have been in your shoes. I've been in a classroom full of kids. I've had a classroom with 30 kids. I've had a classroom with 10 kids that were, every single one of them had an IEP and a behavior plan. I've been in charge of behavior for the entire school where I visited classrooms. There's a lot of different ways you can collect data. You just got to get a little more creative, make it a little easier on yourself. If there's one behavior, one child that has a specific behavior that's high frequency, you carry a clicker. Click every time they exhibit that behavior. At the end of the period, this is how many times, write it down. If there's 10 kids in the class, you have a little document for just that period and you just write the frequency. We got to collect the behavior. It is important. And we cannot see growth unless we're collecting the data, because we can't estimate, oh, I think it was 5 times. No, that's not accurate. Data tells a story. And unless we have that complete story, we cannot make changes.
So you can let our listeners know it is okay to ask for the staff to explain how the data is being collected, to show them the raw data. And I think a lot of our families, they're just so nervous to ask, but we're the professionals of our children. I just want you to encourage them about this, like asking for the data, because the data is what drives the progress for the child's IEP.
100%. I think data is one of the most important parts of the IEP, because you know what your child's strengths and weaknesses are without the data. We can't sit next to them in their classroom and listen to what's going on and point those out. The data is what tells us. And if there's behavioral data along with it, then we don't know if it's affecting the academic data. Are they really not capable of that reading goal, or is it that there's a behavior affecting it? Data tells such a story. We have to see, is there emotional difficulties coming into play? So yes, parents 100% need to, I would like to see the data each time, because you need to know, sometimes the parent is the child's best advocate. We're here to assist you. We're here to assist your child. We're here to provide clarity. Just because we've gotten all these extra degrees for that very purpose to help you in that instance. But the parent is the best advocate for the child because no one knows your child better than you. And no one knows what they're going through better than you to support them.
Can you also provide like some examples that are like poorly written just so the families can be like, wait, because most likely a parent may be like, I think I may have that in my IEP. So they can double check.
A poorly written goal would be like, by the end of the year, John will write an essay scoring at least 3 out of 4 in 70% of the trials. Or John will write a 5-paragraph essay. But that is not clear. That's very vague. So we want as many details as possible. So one may be by May 2026, given a graphic organizer and teacher support, John will write a 3-paragraph opinion essay with a clear introduction, supporting details, and a conclusion, scoring 3 out of 4 with a writing rubric 70% of the time or 80% of the time. There's so many more details. So when I look at that goal, I know that John is working on opinion essays instead of a different type of essay. Maybe it's not expository. He needs to work on opinion. Maybe when I look at this goal, I know he needs to give a clear introduction. That's what he's working on. So the goal should tell me exactly by looking at it what John has had difficulty with. And if I just say John is working on giving me a 3-paragraph essay, scoring a 3 out of 4, I don't know what John's ever had an issue with. You're just telling me he's never scored a 3 out of 4. That he's having trouble with that, with the rubric. You're not telling me that he's had trouble with introductions. You're not telling me it's really opinion essays he needs to work on and not any other type of essays. So the goal, when you look at the strengths and weaknesses in the IEP, the goal should really be working on whatever the data said was the difficulty. If John, so that goal should be very repetitive of whatever I said the weakness was. So his reading teacher, language arts teacher should have said, John has difficulty with opinion-based essays. John has difficulty writing a clear introduction. Those should just be hand in hand with the data and what I'm saying he's having difficulty with in school.
No, that was great. No, thank you so much for that example. What if goal has a lot of prompt levels and as our child goes through the school system, let me just give you an example. Like the student is 16 years old and just a few more years for them to graduate, but the goal itself, it talks a lot of like we can use the one that you used, but I'm going to change it a little bit by saying it has 3 to 4 verbal prompts, so they're getting that verbal assistance. How, but the mom is saying, can we not use the prompts however you want to use it, like the visual, gestural, or written? How can we get the team to understand, or what is your suggestions to the parents why over prompting can be an issue? Because what we're trying to get our children is getting them ready after college, sorry, after high school, college,
Right.
or be independent, because that's what we're trying to get our kids
Right.
to be.
The goal is it's okay to have prompts, but we need to start weaning them off the prompts. So the goal this year may include 3 prompts, but by the time we get to next year, it should be 2 or 1. I say a lot of times we don't want these goals just recycled. It is okay to be working on the same concept or area, but the goal should not be exactly the same. Because how have we met the goal and had progress if we're just repeating the same goal? So those prompts need to lessen. By the time they get to their senior year, we want them to be independent. Now, we also have to be realistic, right? So is it possible that our child will always need a prompt? Depending on the child, it is. But we have to try because you know what? We need to have our expectations here and see if they meet them. We have to challenge them. We have to expect more. So let's expect that they're going to need 1 and meet that 1. And then let's take that 1 prompt away and say, oh my goodness, they met it. It's always okay to put the prompt back, but we want them to meet our goals. And I have to tell you, it's normal child and teenage behavior to not go beyond. And I know you're only expecting me to do 1 to 5. Why would I do all 10? right?
I know.
At any normal teenage behavior, no matter if you have special needs or not, that you're going to do what you need to do and not a lot more if you don't have to. So we need to make sure that we are weaning them off the prompts and that the whole team is in agreement that these young adults are going to be independent one day. Whether they live with you, they live independently, whatever the case may be, we have to get them as independent and ready for the world as they need to be. And so we would like to take the one-to-one assistance, wean it back, the prompting levels, wean it back. If someone is sitting next to them this year, prompting them all the time, we want them to sit a couple seats away next year and prompt them less. We want them in the back of the room the year after that and prompting them even less because we want to make them independent adults.
No, I love that. I remember seeing a post about you talking about transition into adulthood, right? My goodness,
Yes.
please tell us more about that.
Yes. And so we have something called vocational rehabilitation, which was named a zillion years ago and is not even what it sounds like. So it is actually a service that if the student has a 504, an IEP that they are eligible for, starting when they're younger, actually, it depends on which state they're in, but I'm in Florida, and so they are eligible to receive these services starting in about high school. And it's something that they can utilize fully when they graduate high school. In ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, they are eligible to contact their vocational rehabilitation office. And when they're under 18, the parent can help with this. And they can receive services like summer camps to help them with independent living skills, organization, writing their resume. A lot of these vocational rehabilitation camps offer payment, so they earn a little paycheck. It's very good to learn those skills early. When they reach their senior year, they start building a relationship with vocational rehabilitation. Some schools have a middleman who helps with this, a transition specialist or an ESE specialist, or just bridging the relationship. Hey, meet this person. They're going to help you when you're an adult. That's what we're doing. And so when they graduate from high school, the beginning of the vocational rehabilitation meeting is a little tedious. There's a lot of paperwork. They want to do some testing and find out, are you good at math? Are you good at science? What can we gear your career towards? They want to know what your needs are, but they provide financial assistance that is not based on parents' income. It's based on the child's needs. So if you fill out all these forms and find out, oh my goodness, my son or daughter is not eligible for any financial assistance, how are we going to put them through all this school? No, vocational rehabilitation helps. They provide job placement. They provide internships. They provide guidance. Whatever it is that you want to do, it doesn't have to be college bound. It could be something vocational. They provide all that assistance and they provide it lifelong. So say they want to go to college this year, but you decide next year you want to go to college. They're still there. You have to start the process again, but they are still there. So it's a very useful tool that parents feel like, okay, the help hasn't totally disappeared,
Yeah.
right? There is still someone there. And a lot of colleges have a disability office. A lot of times people are like, okay, so my IEP, I can take it to college. You can. You're not going to get the same services, right? If you had one-to-one assistance, if you had someone, your IEP and send it to the college that you're applying to, because now you're an adult. Now you decide whether you want the assistance. So it will be up to the student to take that IEP or that 504 to that office in their college that helps with that. And they're all titled different things. Usually it's like an access center or something like that. They take it to that office and they say, I had an IEP in high school and these are the services that I received. What can I receive in college? And that office helps them sign up for classes, monitors them a little bit, gives them a little extra assistance. Like we were saying, to get from 5 prompts to 3 prompts to 2 prompts. We give a lot of help in high school and we slowly want to make them more independent. And college, when you get there, there is, right? Because you're not a 30-year-old adult. You're 18 or 17 even. So you still need a little bit of help. We don't want to give you from 0 to 100 and take it all away. So there still is assistance to be found.
No, thank you so much for that. I feel like a lot of families are benefiting from just hearing you speak. So this is so great. I love how you keep on going back to we're prepping our kids, right? Because even from very little, like parents, right? I feel like A lot of parents, we do this. I'm a mom of five. So, like, each of my kids, I know they have their own future, but I can picture it. So, I want to say this is very similar, right? The IEP is like really similar. And I just love how you're saying, like, we're preparing them, right? Getting them to be more independent. And I just really loved how you talked about the data part of it. I was like, I'm a behavior analyst. So, I don't know if I told you that, but sometimes they're just like, what is it with her and data? But data, I just, the more I hear you speak about it, I was like, oh my goodness, another person. Yes, thank you. That gets it. I just thank you so much for giving all those good advice. And I just, can I ask you one more question? Okay.
Of
Just making
course.
sure. I know that we've talked a bunch, even before we started recording. So I just wanted to double check. Like, what else should parents look for to ensure that the IEP goal is truly meaningful and relevant to their child's unique needs?
So the parents should be asking, like, what is the actual data being measured here? Am I going to be seeing work samples to be measured? Is this testing? Is it behavioral data? How is that going to be collected? Is it going to be collected with grades? Is it going to be collected with frequency? Is it going to be collected using some kind of rubric? I want a copy of the rubric. You have to know how it's being measured. And over time, you want to see the progression, whether it's a work sample starting from the beginning of the 9 weeks to the end of the 9 weeks to see the improvement, whether it's a graph showing the data that, is being collected to see the improvement. You want to see all of those things. Making sure it's a meaningful goal. You need to look at that goal and say, is this goal going to make my child more independent and more successful in school and in life, right? Say it's an organizational goal. That is going to make your child more successful and independent in school and in life, because being organized comes naturally to very few people. A lot of people, it's a learned skill, right? I have an agenda in my phone. I have a written agenda. I have a calendar in my computer. And I know that without those things, I would forget the things I need to do. Lists, I have running lists everywhere. But that doesn't come naturally, and especially for our kids with special needs. If they have an executive functioning issue, organizational skills is at the very back of their brain, right? They're not thinking about that at all. So those things have to be taught. Those things have to be reinforced. If they're working on those things, you want to see that there's a measurable difference, and you want to know that's going to be relevant for them. Yeah, absolutely. That's going to help them, because if you're disorganized later in life at work, you're probably going to get fired. Got to hold the job. And if you're not meeting your deadlines and showing up to meetings, that's not going to happen. These are things that are going to help them lifelong. So if your child is having problem managing multi steps, you want to say, okay, it's okay for that goal to be that we're breaking down the steps for them and giving them one at a time this year, right? That it's okay to do that. But next year, I want them to be given 2 steps at a time, right? Because they have to eventually learn to manage those things on themselves. We also need to look at, is this goal going to be given them? If my child is a visual learner, I want to make sure that they're seeing it presented in different ways visually. I want to see that it's on the board. I want to see that examples are being done for them. If they're an auditory learner, I may need it repeated to them a few times, right? So we want to make sure that whatever the goals that we're working on are relevant to the way our children learn. The goal is always to bridge the gap between where they are and where they should be. The goal should be connected to the grade level standards, but it should be scaffolded from where they are to where they should be. And so the goal for this year is going to get them here. So eventually we want to be here, but it's not overnight, and we all understand that, but we want to scaffold. We want to build that ladder from where they are to where they should be. But we should see that connection in the goal, right? We should see that it's not just a goal going nowhere. Sure that the goals and the IEP are individualized to your child and fit them like a glove, right? It's giving them steps towards real progress, right? If we don't make sure that these are individualized for our children and really relevant to them, then it's just a piece of paper, right? It has to be relevant. It has to be something that's made just for them.
Wow. Thank you so much for all of that information. The more that I listened to you, I was like, where were you? No, seriously, where were you over a decade ago? Because my daughter's 15 right now, but I'm like, life would have been so much easier if I would have heard you speak. Like, everything that you're giving to the families is yes. So Where can families find you? Actually, can you please share if they want to hear you more? Can you please share?
Absolutely. I'm right now on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and I'm your educational advocates handle.
So cute.
Your educational advocates at gmail.com. They can reach me there. Currently work within the school system in Miami-Dade County, so I cannot represent anyone in Miami-Dade County, but anyone outside of that system in the state of Florida and outside of the state of Florida, I am available to help review documents, review data, attend meetings, whatever the family needs for me to stand behind them and be a little bit, give them a little bit more strength. And the goal with the family is the same as the goal with our students is I want to teach you how to advocate for your child. So eventually you don't need me.
I love that. Thank you. This is great. And thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
So, what did you think about the episode? If you guys did like it, don't forget to subscribe, like, share the resource, comment, let us know what you think. Now, Heather, thank you so much for coming today. I really do appreciate you breaking it down, the IEP SMART goals, so that way the families can truly be more of an advocate for the child in those IEP meetings, as we all know can be very scary in our journey. Also, families, I do want you to understand that you guys do have the right to ask for clarity, the data, goals that reflect who your child is and where they are going. So with that, I know that you guys can do it. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. But for now, I'll see you guys next week. Take care. Bye.